Hi friends, welcome to today's Re-Energize yoga flow. We are going to be targeting, toning, strengthening and lengthening the whole body. When you're ready, we'll get started in a seated position. You might like to join me in Sukhasana, easy pose, crossing the legs, taking a moment to settle into the body, maybe closing the eyes, or finding a soft gaze. Perhaps you might like to set an intention for today's practice, or simply acknowledge your efforts for showing up here today, nurturing your mind, body, and soul. And we'll take 3 cleansing breaths to commence practice. Inhaling through the nostrils and gradually exhaling out the mouth. On your next inhale, we'll extend our arms overhead, finding length. And on your exhale, we'll twist to the left, placing the outer edge of the right palm on the left thigh, maybe tenting up onto the left fingertips, gazing behind the shoulder. With every inhale, find yourself growing taller. And with every exhale, seeing if you can twist a little more. Relax and let go. Breathe. About 2 more breaths. On your next inhale, we'll extend our arms overhead, placing them down by the sides, and we'll swap the cross of the legs. And again, coming into a twist, inhale, extend the arms overhead, finding length in the torso. Exhale, twist to the right, placing the outer edge of the left palm against the right thigh, tenting up onto the right fingertips, finding a soft gaze. Warming up the body, letting go. If ever the mind begins to wander throughout today's practice, simply guiding yourself back to your intention or tuning into the breath. Inhale, extend the arms overhead. Exhale, float them down by your side. And from here, we'll take a seated cat-cow, maybe placing your palms on your knees. Inhale, scoop the chest forward, broaden across the collarbones, gaze up. Exhale, scoop the chin towards the chest, curl and round, engaging the core. And again, a few more times like this, flowing with the breath, tuning into that mind-body connection. Letting go of whatever was on your mind before practice began, simply arriving in the now. You might like to stay with these seated cat-cows or find a dynamic variation as we move the body around in a circular motion, maybe pausing on one side. You might like to make it a little bit more fluid. It's entirely up to you. Maybe inviting some neck rotations into the movement, swaying the belly, the chest, the shoulders, leaning into what feels good. And if you are moving in one direction, you might like to mix it up and start flowing in the opposite direction. Beginning to slow down the movements, making our way to an upright seated position. From here, we'll walk our left fingertips over to the side, extending the right arm, coming into a side body twist. Back to center, walk the right fingertips out, extend the left arm overhead, stretching the side body, moving at your own rhythm. Being mindful to keep the shoulders opened, expand across the chest, acknowledging the heart space. And you might like to stay down on one side and pause for a little longer. Back to center. Swapping to the other side, finding that side stretch. Maintaining a little bit of core activation. We're protecting our back here. One more breath. Back to center. From here we'll turn to face the short edge of our mat, coming into a diamond pose, Vajrasana. Sits bones are on top of our heels, palms are in our lap, rolling the shoulders back, finding length along the spine, relaxing the muscles of the face. One breath here, and we'll transition into a tabletop position, Balasana. Wrists are in line with shoulders, knees are in line with hips, knees are hip width distance apart, and we'll take a standard variation of cat and cow. On your inhale, scooping the chest forward. Exhale, curl and round, press down through the fingertips, draw the navel towards the spine. Finding your own cadence. Beginning to warm up the wrists, the arms, the fingertips. And from here we'll come up to a kneeling position, placing our hands on our hips. You might like to tuck the toes here for a little bit more knee support, or keep the toes pointed to the mat behind you. We'll transition into a dynamic Ustrasana, Camel Pose, reaching for our right heel with our right fingertips, extending the left arm overhead, scooping the body forward and going on the other side, pushing those hips forward in line with the knees as you come into the lovely heart-opening expression. Taking it at your own rhythm, tuning into what feels good. Sinking those hips back towards the heels as you come forward and rotating around to one side. Back to the other side. Once more either side, and we'll come up to our kneeling position again. From here we'll take a static variation of Camel Pose. You might like to rest in baby camel, just placing your palms on either side of your hips, broadening across the chest, finding a slight back bend. Or if you feel like exploring the full expression, cartwheeling the right arm behind you, reaching a hold of that right foot with the right wrist. And if you're comfortable doing the same with the left arm, maybe gazing up, lowering the head to face the back of the space, pushing those hips forward, broadening across the heart space. A slight activation of the gluteus muscles and coming back to center. You might like to rest here in child's pose, or take it again on the other side, this time cartwheeling the left arm behind, reaching for the left foot. When you feel comfortable, cartwheeling the right arm back to meet the right foot, pushing the hips forward, keeping the hips in line with the knees, letting go. One more breath. And beginning to work your way out of Ustrasana, placing your hands on your hips, beginning to sink your hips back towards your heels, widening your knees, and lowering the forehead onto the mat as we come into Balasana, child's pose. This is a wonderful counter posture to release any tension that might have built up in the lower back. Really feel yourself breathing into that space. Surrendering to this moment. Staying in child's pose, we'll walk our fingertips over to the right, maybe placing your left palm on top of your right, feeling a nice side body stretch along the left side, all the way from the shoulder to the hip. Breathe. One more breath. Walking our way back through center and coming onto the left side, maybe placing your right palm on top of your left, working on grounding those hips. If you notice your right hip rising slightly, simply guide it back. One more breath. Coming back to center. From here we'll come up into tabletop position, Balasana, tucking our toes under, walking our hands out in front a few inches, and we'll push up into downward facing dog, Arumugashvanasana, drawing the navel towards the spine, rolling the shoulders back and down, creating length along the back of the neck, engaging through those palms, fingertips. You might like to walk out the dog, bending one knee, straightening the other leg. And when you're ready, sinking those heels back towards the mat. If that's not working for you today, you might like to bend your knees considerably. And when you're ready, we'll float up onto the balls of our feet, lifting our heels off the mat. And on your next inhale, we will lift our right leg into the sky, coming into three-legged dog, Ikapada Arumugashvanasana, keeping the hips squared. One breath here, and with control, flexing the knee, guiding it towards the chest, gently placing the sole of your foot in between the two hands, pivoting the back foot out on an angle as we come up into Warrior One Virbadrasana. Doing your best to square your hips to the front of the mat, being mindful to keep that front knee, the right knee, in line with the ankle, tracking over the second toe, seeing if you can get a right angle between that right leg and the surface beneath you. 3 breaths here. Circling the arms down to frame the front foot, plant the palms down as we step back into downward facing dog. Lifting the hips up towards the sky. 3 breaths here. Relaxing the muscles of the face. Letting go of any thoughts that may be coming to the surface. Floating up onto the toes, lifting the left leg up, this time coming into three-legged dog, keeping the hips squared. Being mindful of that tripod activation. And with control, flex the left knee, curl the knee towards the chest, gently place the left sole of the foot between the hands, pivot on the back foot as we come into Warrior One on the other side. Engaging that core. Squeezing the inner thighs together. We're not collapsing into the pelvis, we're lifting up and out of the lower back. Maybe closing the eyes. Breathe. One more breath. Circle the arms down, frame the front foot, step back into downward dog. Finding length along the back of the hamstrings. Seeing if you can let go a little more with every exhalation. Find a deeper stretch, a deeper connection to this moment. Accepting where you're at today. On your next inhale, we'll again float up onto the balls of our feet, raising our right leg into three-legged dog, keeping that leg engaged, finding length through the tips of the toes, drawing the navel towards the spine, and with control, bending the knee, drawing the right knee towards the chest, lowering the right foot down with control, pivoting on the back leg, this time cartwheeling the arms as we come into Virbadrasana 2, Warrior 2. Back foot is roughly parallel with the short edge of the mat. Right knee is tracking forwards. Arms are extended wide like bird wings, palms facing the surface beneath you. Arms are in line with shoulder height. You might like to gaze forward over those fingertips. Being mindful to keep a slight tuck of the pelvis. We're engaging the core here, we're not arching the spine. One more breath. And from here we'll re-extend our front leg, heel toeing the back foot in slightly as we set up for Trikonasana triangle pose. This could be a great option for a prop, a block if you have one handy, placing a block on the inner seam of that right leg, affording yourself a bit of elevation so that you can find length along both sides of the waist. If not, you're more than welcome to place your hand on your ankle, your shin, your thigh, or on the mat. Extending that left arm up overhead, feeling yourself grow taller through the fingertips, maybe gazing up towards the left hand or finding a soft gaze out in front. From here, we'll pivot our back foot in slightly as we come into pyramid pose, Parsvottanasana. Working on hinging forward from the hips, we're finding length along the back of the body. If you have a block, you might like to place one on either side of your front foot for support, really helping you stretch deep into that right hamstring, melting your chest towards your right thigh, softening the shoulders, the back of the neck, the forehead. Breathe. You might like to stay with your palms on the floor or interlace your fingers behind your back and extend your arms, drawing your hands towards the earth. Seeing if you can go a little deeper into this posture, relax a little more. 3 breaths here. Slowly releasing the bind, placing the palms on the floor or using your blocks as we come into a high supported lunge, Anjaneyasana. Staying high on the ball of that back foot, the left foot, scissoring the inner thighs together. One more inhalation here. And on your exhalation, we'll push back, extending our front leg, coming into a variation of pyramid pose. Inhale, come into high lunge. Exhale, pyramid pose, just like this, flowing with the breath. Using the props for support to bring the ground a little closer to you. Finding fluidity with each motion, connecting the breath to the body, to the mind. On your next exhale, we'll stay back in pyramid pose, seeing if you can get your nose towards your knee and coming up into supported high lunge. From here, we'll frame our front foot, step back into plank pose and push back into downward facing dog. Tuning into the breath. Floating up onto the balls of the feet, lifting the toes, extending the left leg into the air, 3-legged dog. Hips are squared, squeezing those glutes, the hamstring, finding length along that leg. And we'll come into a tiger curl, drawing the knee towards the chest, placing the left foot down, pivoting on the back foot as we come into warrior 2, taking a moment to find any adjustments, maybe walking out the front foot, ensuring that that front knee, the left knee, is in line with the ankle. Arms are extended long at shoulder height. Slowing down the breath, letting go. Finding engagement in the core, finding length through the crown of the head, being mindful of your connection to the surface beneath you. One more breath, and from here we'll re-extend our front leg, heel-toeing the back foot in slightly as we transition into Trigonasa, triangle pose. Hinging forward, finding length across both sides of the body before we come into our fold. Finding the props if you'd like, extending the right arm overhead, finding length through the fingertips, broadening across the chest, the collarbone, as we twist the torso towards the right side of whatever space you're in. Maybe closing the eyes, settling in. One more breath. And from here we'll lower our right arm, pivot our back foot in slightly, maybe walking it in a few inches as we come into pyramid pose, Parsvottanasana. Again, using props if you'd like to bring the surface closer to you, working on finding length through the torso before you fold over that front leg. Maybe lowering the nose towards the knee, doing your best to square the hips to the front of the mat, really stretching the hamstrings, the calf. If you want to take this a little deeper, you're more than welcome to flex that front foot, really getting into the calf, the belly of the hamstring. A few more breaths. If you've got blocks, you might like to keep them where they are as we lower our back leg, coming into a supported high lunge, Anjaneyasana on the left side. Exhale, extend that front leg as we push back into pyramid pose. Inhale, come forward into high lunge. Exhale, push back to pyramid. A few more rounds like this, flowing with the breath, going at your own pace. On your next exhale, we'll push back into Parsvottanasana and stay, finding a static hold. Either staying high on that back foot, or you might like to lower the heel down towards the ground. It's entirely up to you. One more breath, coming forward into Anjaneyasana. If you're using props, place them to the side as we plant our palms either side of the front foot, stepping back into plank pose, shifting the hips back into downward facing dog. Find your connection to the breath. And gently lower the knees, sink the hips back as we come into child's pose, extending the arms out in front. Maybe resting the chest, the belly, the forehead on the mat. Letting go of any thoughts that might be coming to the surface. Tuning into this moment. Trusting that you are exactly where you need to be. All is well. You might like to remind yourself of the intention that you set at the start of today's practice, or simply tune into the subtleties of the breath. I invite you to stay in child's pose for as long as you like. You might like to pause the video and take Shavasana, whatever serves you in this moment. Thank you all so much for joining us today. Have a beautiful day. Namaste. Thank you.